Okay guys, good morning and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about how to take impressions for anterior implants. The anterior implants are kind of tough. It's easy to mess those up, and if you don't relay to the laboratory of how you want these done, it becomes very, very challenging. And so I'll show you a case where we didn't do a temporary for a patient, and then the patient went to see their general dentist. The general dentist took impressions. They weren't happy with the results, and they had some issues. And most of the issues is really because they didn't relay to the laboratory how they want the soft tissue to look. So let's jump on in and let's go from there. Let's see what we can do. All right, so this is the text message that I got was from the dentist. Was the crown was awful. They decided not to cement the crown and just temporized it. And they wanted to send him back to us to see what could be done. And the problem here, you can see it's pretty obvious. This final restoration looks terrible. There's an implant platform right here. There's an implant here. But the issue this patient had was he didn't have a temporary tooth, so the laboratory had no way to figure out how to make this abutment. So they just made a straight abutment, which looks like this and like this, and then the crown looked like a lollipop. You know, there's big overhangs. It just was terrible. And so ideally what you want is you want the crown to look like this, smooth and kind of flow out like that. So, you know, first of all, I would have temporized this patient. That's number one. But number two, how do you relay to the laboratory how you want the abutment to look like, especially the part that goes under the gingiva? And how do you relay the gingival contours to the laboratory? And I'll show you how to do that. We ended up making a temporary tooth for this gentleman, and this is what it looks like. And you see how nice and smooth the contours are. You know, the laboratory made him a restoration that literally looked like this, like that, and simply because they didn't know how they wanted. They didn't know what was going on under the soft tissue, and they didn't want to push too much on the soft tissue. So we want to give them an opportunity to kind of we want to give the laboratory a way to figure out what you want these things to look like. So I put this temporary tooth in, and here's a side view of the tooth. Again, notice this smooth transmission of from the implant platform all the way to the dentogingival junction. It should be smooth and progressive, not stepped up. Well, unfortunately we lost this patient. He loved his temporary tooth so much he never came back, and we never got a chance to take impressions on him. But I'll show you a similar case that I did. This is a 65-year-old female that really wanted an immediate tooth when we put the implant. So I did a temporary. It's not the best, but it served its purpose. And one thing I want to show you, the implant platform is usually about 3 millimeters below the gingival junction, and I made a restoration that's very smooth with a nice transition. And essentially what this does is it gives you a nice soft tissue support, so you don't have any black triangles here or here. And she was ready for final restoration, and I wanted to show the laboratory how I want the contours. I wanted to show the laboratory how I want the contours in this area, the area below the gingiva, and I'll show you how we did that. First step is we actually take the temporary out of the mouth. That's number one. Number two, this is a implant analog, and we screw the temporary into the analog. Now, one thing I want you to be very careful with these: when you screw them in, don't be very tight, because otherwise a lot of times you try to unscrew them and then this analog will spin in the impression, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So we take this impression coping and the temporary tooth complex is what I call it, and we put it in a little bit of wax in a paper or plastic cup, And then we actually take an impression of the bottom of the temporary. You want to make sure you fill this up all the way. You want to fill this up all the way and make sure you don't have any bubbles past the dentogingival junction. So I'll go a few millimeters past that. And if you're patient enough, you can even use light body PVS. The impression is a lot more accurate. Here I used Blue Moose just because it's quick. It sets in about 30 seconds. But sometimes with the Blue Moose, what I notice is sometimes you get bubbles in there and it's just not very accurate. Here's a view from the top. The other thing here is you definitely want to mark where the buccal is because sometimes you can get lost. So definitely mark buccal mesial distal, what you're seeing here. Make sure you mark it. You take the impression, you take the temporary off the analog, and this is why you don't want it to be too tight, because if you screw it in there tight and then you try to unscrew it, sometimes the analog will spin, and now you're just going to relay wrong information to the laboratory. What I end up using here is a open tray impression coping. I feel like open tray gives the laboratory more information. It's more accurate. It doesn't move. This is what the open tray impression coping looks like, and this is what the closed tray. You can use a closed tray as well, but I in this case I opted for the open tray. And what you do is you take this and you screw it in here. Again, not very tight. Just finger tight, very loose. And now you have the open tray impression coping in the analog, and you can see the space. There's space between where the gum is and where this, and we're gonna fill this area here, and even back here if you can, with composite. Here it is. I use flowable composite. It flows very, very well, and then I cure it. And that's what it looks like. If you have any space in the back of it, in this case we don't, but if it's a big central, you definitely will have space there. Fill it 360 degrees all the way around. Sometimes you may want to do like a black marker, mark the buccal aspect, because it's easy to get lost when you transfer this to the mouth. When you take it out, that's what the construct looks like. So now you have indexed how you want the gum to look like to the laboratory, and we transfer this whole thing to the mouth. Again, I recommend you do like a little black marker to mark it where the buccal is, just so you don't get lost, because these things, and especially in some implants have like 6 degrees of rotation. You can easily get lost in there. And then you won't be accurate, and you relay wrong information to the laboratory. You put it in the mouth. This is an open tray. You screw it in, and then you have to make a hole in the tray, in the impression tray, so this part comes off, because once you take impression of this, this whole thing comes out in the impression. And so when the laboratory pours this, now they have an idea of what you want the soft tissue profile to look like. And in this case, it should look like something like this. And so when they do make a screw retained crown or even a custom abutment, they know exactly how you like it. Here's another view. Again, you want to make sure that your composite is 360 degrees all the way around, and you're relaying proper information to the laboratory. So doing every step correctly is very, very important. And this is what the impression coping looks like once the open tray impression coping comes out in the impression. And when they make the soft tissue model, you're gonna relay this information to the lab of how you want. So they're gonna make the crown under the soft tissue, because this is the implant platform right here. The implant platform is right there. So they're gonna make a crown that looks exactly like the temporary you made. And I hope this helps. Here's an example of when we did. This is a final restoration. It's a screw retained restoration. And again, what we did, this is not this case, but it's another patient, but notice how smooth and nicely transitioned the contours of the crown is. This gives perfect results. All right, so this is what we get back from the lab. It's the cast, this patient's cast with the implant analog in there, and there's a soft tissue mold right there. And so it should match the temporary crown perfectly. And this is the custom abutment that's made for this patient. Again, the bottom of this custom abutment should match the temporary crown that we indexed earlier. And here's the final crown on top of this custom abutment. And if you compare the two restorations, the temporary and the permanent, they should match exactly in shape and contour, as you can see here. And again, this is the custom abutment in the mouth. It screws into this implant, and the crown is cemented right on top. I just placed this for pictures. This patient went to her general dentist to do the final restoration. Again, another view. One thing you could appreciate here, that there are no black triangles, and the soft tissue is perfect. The soft tissue contour is what we expected out of this restoration. There are no black triangles in this area and in this area, and the restoration looks very natural. All right, guys, well, thanks for listening, and I hope this helps you restore these cases. The temporary restorations are extremely important, and you get very nice results.